I apologize for the slight delay. In starting this. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon on the inaugural episode of Masai's Fireside Chat. We do have someone very accomplished, very senior as a guest today. We have Ms. Sreerupa Sengupta as our So we have Ms. Sreerupa Sengupta with us. Before I begin introductions, just a small reminder, at the moment, you won't be able to unmute yourself. We will be having a discussion for the next half an hour. And then in the last final half an hour, we will open the floor to questions from you all, where you can directly address Sreerupa and ask her all your questions. So without any further ado, let me start by introducing a wonderful guest today. So I do apologize. I'm going to read this out because when you have someone so accomplished, it's really impossible to memorize all their accomplishments and their experience. So I am going to read this out of a paper. Sreerupa is the global head HR of 3i Infotech Ltd, an Indian IT company that was established in 1993. She comes with 25 plus years of experience, cross-functional experience in HR, in IT, enabled services, operations, and finance. She's a specialist in HR and IT, talent acquisition, employee engagement, among other things. In the past, she has worked with Nelito Systems, Siemens, and Wipro. Now, if you're feeling intimidated by any chance, I can't blame you, but also it doesn't end there. She also happens to be a qualified cost and work accountant. And I love this line about Sreerupa, which is that her love for people development finds place in her spare time too, where she coaches people individually outside of work. Sreerupa, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Suresh, for such a nice and elaborate introduction. I don't think I'm worthy of all of that, but thank you.
Let me just add
for inviting me today. It's always nice to interact with young people, and the pleasure is entirely mine.
Well, let me add modesty to her qualities as well, right there. So, why are we here today? The Indian IT industry, whether it is big IT companies or startups, have been going through a certain watershed moment for the past, particularly in the past 2-3 years. There is a huge demand for fresh recruitment in IT in many roles, but techie roles. But there is a shortage of supply given the high demand among companies. What complicates this further is things like there is a very high attrition rate that has been seen in the past few years. So, for example, in 2021, the attrition rate, the rate at which people are leaving organizations, reached a 20-year high of 21%. That is a huge number to deal with. But, this is all after people join. The challenges start even before that. Suppose you have interviewed a candidate and you went there, you rolled out an offer after the whole process. And somewhere near the end, when they're about to join, they reject the offer, or they say that I'm not taking up this offer. This is called an offer drop. As of 2021, for certain roles in IT, this drop rate stands at 55 to 57%. Roles including full stack developers, front end developers, back end developers, data engineers, and data scientists. This is extremely challenging for organizations, for recruitment managers, for talent acquisition professionals, for HR professionals. So today we have Sreerupa here to really tell us about the challenges themselves, as well as how a company like 3i tries to tackle them. So let me start with my very first question, Sreerupa. Like I mentioned, as of 2021, the offer drop rate is really high, 55 to 57%. Does this conform with your own observations and experiences in the past few years?
So you're absolutely right. The offer dropout percentage is at an all-time high. And I think my numbers would be slightly higher. So what I see is about, 1 in 10 person offered is joining. Maybe out of that, 5 would tell you upfront, and then 5 would tell you at the last moment. So overall, the percentage is higher. But yes, when you are told upfront, you may be not consider it as an offer per se, and offer dropout will be considered only where people have confirmed and said yes, I'll be joining. So and yes, the demand is definitely much more in technology areas. Few of the technologies you already mentioned. I would also like to mention technologies like cybersecurity, cloud. Then of course full stack developers. They are at a all-time record demand, unprecedented, like we have seen. Of course, the IT industry has gone through cycles, and we have seen this phases of high demand. Even during Y2K, we have seen this, and even once before the internet times, this has happened once before. And in all the cases, we have seen that it eventually sort of flattens out, because the supply engine gears up to meet the demand. But you know, uh, people who are in that sweet spot, they're making the hay while the sun shines, as they say. So yes, and of course there are demands for newer technologies that like ML or IoT as well. So as you rightly say, this is absolutely a fallout of a supply demand mismatch. And the supply remaining constant, the demand suddenly increased post COVID, because what happened is there was a sudden spark of digitization, and obviously every company wanted to digitize all their operations, everything. And then IT companies had got contracts which they had to deliver, for which they need people. So and then of course, when what happens is, when you have high demand, then people are of course in high demand. And so there's a spiraling effect. You have shortage, then you have resignation, because your people are being poached by other companies. So your demand is even more. So it's an ever increasing gap which we are seeing in the market. And if we have to believe some of the studies, I just got a report today which says that 48.1% of employees are planning to leave in the next 90 days. And I'm sure many of you have received a WhatsApp, news item which was doing the rounds 2-3 days back, which said that 86% of people were planning to quit in the next 6 months. So, it's kind of sort of scary when you see that 86% of the people leaving, then who remains. And so yes, the great resignation is a reality. The reasons for leaving may be different in India and US. In US, it is more of work-life balance. People sort of reprioritized and thought that, what is important to me, what is meaningful to me. In India, I guess it is more about, there are opportunities, why not take advantage of it? And of course, then the softer things come in, that, so I have an offer in hand, which is X amount. Another offer is also maybe X plus 5%. At that point in time, the 5% doesn't matter. So then I'm looking at more softer aspects, like which company is more flexible, which has a higher, brand value, which has a better culture, which has a better fitment to my own value system. So those are coming much later, but they're coming as well. So, these are the things we are seeing. As I said, each candidate has about 10 to 12 offers. Salaries are in a continuous upward spiral, and employees are being poached at an unprecedented rate. Uh, and it's not that people are actively looking out for job. It's someone was telling me a recruiter has a brother who is working in the technology space, and she was telling me, you can't believe that my brother is getting he's already accepted an offer. He's getting around 30 calls every day from different recruiters just to talk about some opportunity. So this is the other side of the story, how the candidates are, it's not that he's going out and, putting his resume up there again because he's happy. But he also doesn't know, what the market is like and how volatile it is at this point in time. So, so that's how I hope it answers your question.
Absolutely does. And I will be coming back to the word that you use, volatile. But before that, I do want to ask that not all of our audience members are part of the human resources or talent acquisition community. So if you could give them an idea of how this becomes a challenge for an organization and for recruiters, maybe if you had any example that you could share, that would be really great.
So I think they would have much more stories to tell me than I have, because I'm a little, away from the action. Though, of course, I see reports, I talk to people, I get to hear. But let me try to answer, and I'm sure they would add much more value to it. So I think the one department, or let's say the two departments which have been on a continuous work mode is the internal IT department of the organization and the recruitment department of any IT organization. So as I said that, if one person joins out of 10 offers, the effort is 10 times more, right? It's just 10 times more. So I think numbers speak, and this is exactly what the situation is. So you have to put in, for that one person to join, you have to spend much more time in doing a hard sell, because there are 5 other people like the recruiter who is also talking to the candidate, trying to woo him. So most of the time of the recruiters are going and keeping of course, identifying people, then talking to them, getting the basics done, and then keeping them warm. Every week, talk to them, find some excuse to talk to them, gauge their mental state, gauge their engagement levels. Smarter recruiters, they also know what is it that is making the person tick. So trying to find that spot which is actually, which sort of holds that person is very important. And people who do that have a much more success rate in, offer to joining ratio. So often I have seen recruiters are mentoring candidates. So they're mentoring candidates saying that, okay, you have that offer. So what is not so good about it, or sometimes you don't, because sometimes you can't take names, because if you do a sale which is so blatant, people are they don't trust you, right? Because they know that you have some intention, and that is why. So you take a middle path. And I'm not saying that you're being dishonest. They also are sometimes they honestly say that, this is wrong with that offer, and this is good with this offer, or this is what you should look at. And maybe not discuss offers per se, but what they should look at. That mentoring and coaching is very, very high currently in the market, and people are doing that a lot. So, and then of course, they're spending a lot of time and talking about the organization, what is good for the organization, how it aligns with the, the personal goal of the person, how it aligns with the value system of the person, how it, is an exciting place, how it is a vibrant place. Those are things which are, definitely being done much more. And at the organization level, of course, it is also much difficult because, you have signed the dotted line, you've committed to the client that, okay, I'll deliver by such and such day, but you don't have people. So you need to sort of scramble, run, do whatever and get people on the board. So it is extremely critical for the organization as well.
Since you are talking about some of these practices, like mentoring the candidates, staying in touch with them, tell us a little more, a few more of these practices that you yourself or your team is using to engage with these employees, with these prospective employees.
I think there's only one word. I'll repeat it twice. It's engage, engage, and engage. That's the only thing that has to be done. But the engagement has to be at different levels. So one is that it has to be at different levels, and then it has to be creative. So there are two sides to it. So when I say different levels, it's not only the recruiter, maybe the recruitment manager, the hiring manager, the department head. So engagement by different people at different levels. And at the organization level also. So, it's engagement, but at different levels. And how are you being creative? Because you can't pick up the phone and ask the candidate, are you joining? So you have to think of things, what to talk about. So what, used to happen in one call, what we are now doing is we are breaking it down into, so first week we will ask about this, next week we will ask about this, third week we will ask about this. This is how we are breaking it up because we need excuses to talk to the person. And then I think all the recruiters have become psychologists. They're trying to gauge, they're trying to understand what the person is thinking. And probing question, prodding have become very important today. So all those, everyone has some trick up their sleeves and which they're sort of using and trying to find out what is going on in the minds of the people. So I think few of the things that we do is, as I said, recruiter has a plan. First week I'll ask this, second week I'll ask this, third week I'll ask this. Then sometimes the recruitment manager will call up saying that, so are you satisfied with the recruiter? Did she answer all your questions? Did he answer all your questions? Just basically, giving the person a feeling that you are very important and, finding an excuse to engage, basically. Then what we do is ask the hiring manager that involves him in the project. When you have a project meeting, why don't you invite him? So that, it will help you when the person joins, that he is also sort of clued into what is happening. Ask for his opinion, make him feel important. So show that, how transparent the organization culture is, how, inclusive we are. So that's something we are doing. The third thing, we also as a department head that, ask for a formal coffee session. If it's physical, good. If it's digital, yes, ask him to bring his coffee cup. You talk about strategic things. You talk about what is there in it for the person if he joins. How exciting is our journey, the organization journey looking? How is the, how do we dovetail into the ambition of the person, goal of the person? So, these are a few things we are doing. Then we also, broke up our onboarding process, and that also we are doing in phases so that If the person is not submitting the documents, then the antenna is up and you're saying, oh, okay, so what happened? This person is not showing interest, not taking calls, has not filled up. So there's something wrong. So basically, we are trying to put up an early warning system in whichever way we can. At the same time, we're just doing a temperature check at each point in time. I, of course, know about companies who are sending laptops, joining kits well in advance. So it's like, it becomes an obligation to employees that, I've accepted the laptop. So how do I now reject? Or, if the organization is trusting me so much, I have not joined and they've given me a laptop. So then this must be a very good organization. So all of those things are happening.
That's very interesting, very fascinating. What I hear is that somehow human resources and talent acquisition is not just limited to that anymore. I hear that you're basically engaging in a psychologist's job. What you're trying to do is marketing as well. There's operations involved. So it's really fascinating to see how just the whole concept of human resources and talent acquisition has evolved over time and turned into what it is today. And I guess a lot of it is very positive as well. It has become less transactional than it used to be before, which is really great. I understand that for 3i Infotech, how important it is as well to really engage them and get them, buy them into the whole concept, because if I remember reading correctly, at the moment, 3i, in fact, there was a report in December that 3i is looking to hire 500 people in Hyderabad. The company is trying to reach a revenue of $1 billion by 2030. So I can understand how critical it must be for you at your end. So you also gave us some examples of how you connect with the candidates psychologically here, right? You're trying to gain their trust. I want to come back to a word that you used in the answer to the very first question, which was volatility. Suddenly now, in the current times, maybe in the future times, there's a new word that, or rather a word that has re-entered our parlance, which is recession. And it is being said that this whole idea of people shopping multiple offers will end now. It was a thing that was happening for a certain time. Is this something that you also believe? What is your forecast of the coming days in, say, the next part of this year and the next year?
So, see, the demand supply gap will even out. Definitely even out. I'm not sure whether you're there, Suhash. Yeah. The frame froze. So, supply will definitely come up. Even bigger organizations have started in taking much more freshers just to match this demand. So, we had seen a drop in the engineering intake because demands were flattening out. Those demands will now again, you will see that there will be much more intake. People will come out of organization. There will be organizations like you who would also augment the supply. And there are, of course, whenever there is a gap, there will be players to come out in the market to fill up that gap, and the supply will definitely match up to the demand, especially in a country like ours where, headcount, manpower, population is not a concern. We will not, have a problem there. I think there are two trends we have to be aware of. One is India as a one-stop shop. That those days are gone. Those days are gone, and probably we are partly to be blamed because our practices are not always very ethical. And as Indians, we take pride in beating the system, which I think the other part of the world sort of has understood, and there is a lack of trust which is slowly building up. And there are many other pockets as you know, Eastern Europe or the Far East, these are good pockets where talent is being churned out, and just a word of caution that as Indians, we must be aware of this, and we must be, looking at long-term gains than this short-term gains. So that is one thing that, and you talked about recession. Yes, there's a lot of discussion on that. I'm not a market expert, but my feeling is I can't talk long term, but I know for sure that uh, this disequilibrium will even out. Maybe 6 months, 9 months to the maximum. After that, it will even out. It will not be like this, and there will be a shakeout as well. Because the moment the supply starts hitting the market, what will happen? Today what is happening is you are hiring a 3-year-old experienced guy at 24 lakhs. That guy will be unemployable. Because when there is supply and when there are people to replace, you will not, the growth opportunities will be limited. Companies will then start looking at margins. Today they're looking at trying to save accounts. Definitely they will look at margins tomorrow. So this is an untenable situation, and this will have fallouts. So that is for sure. Yes, there is a chance that there will be less demand. However, I don't think IT will be impacted so much. Yes, there is an impact on IT if the other industries do slow down. But per se, I don't think IT has a lower susceptibility rate. That's my personal take on this.
Thank you so much for that. I also want to come back to the topic of supply and demands, particularly when we were talking about in the very beginning. I think one of the things that we have seen very typical with India as opposed to other countries is this whole thing of always keeping the pie, generally keeping the pie that everyone wants a piece of limited to students from tier 1 colleges or even tier 1 cities. Do you see that this is something that needs to change, and maybe we need to move out from that to a more tier 2, tier 3 crowd to be able to fill this kind of a shortage in supply?
I think this has already happened in India. See, and post-COVID, there are so many people who have gone back, and people are saying that I don't want to come back because I save so much of money. My work-life balance is so much better. So one is people going back. The other is hiring from tier 2 cities has started long back. I think 10 years back, when people have organizations, bigger organizations have gone and set up units in smaller towns, right? So I don't think we are shy of doing it. So that's not the problem. And then when you talk about engineering colleges or from where the intake is the maximum, there are students from everywhere, right? There are students from everywhere. So I don't think while the college earlier was in the metros, now the colleges are also spread across. In fact, we have built a COE in the deep down in Tamil Nadu, where we have taken freshers from the local area. So I think every organization is doing that because metros are expensive. Demand of people in the metros are much more. Exposure is much more. So, and there is so much of untapped potential in the tier 2, even tier 3, and even in the remote corners of India that I think, everyone is accessing that. And especially when there is a short supply, people will go reach out to places where, you still have chances of getting talent. So.
I'm glad you brought up the centers of excellence, because that is something again that I was reading, that that 3i is looking to open and expand centers of excellence across tier 3 cities in India. I also want to understand that since you were talking about hiring from these areas, have you seen a difference in behavior in terms of say a lower offer drop rate, a higher retention rate? Is that something that you've also seen from candidates coming from these areas or regions?
See, when we talk about offer dropouts, we are talking about lateral hire. And when we are talking about tier 2, tier 3, building something there, we are essentially talking about freshers from those regions. So I don't think these are apple to apple comparisons, and you can compare numbers. So fresher dropouts are always lower, much, much lower.
Thank you so much for answering my questions. At this point, I would like to open the floor to our audience who are a part of this session right now in the Zoom call. So if any of you have a direct question for Sreerupa, can you please raise your hand and I will unmute you. I will ask you to unmute. Anyone? Or if you're, it's okay. You don't have to necessarily unmute yourself. Please feel free to also enter your questions in chat and we'll definitely take them up. Great, we are getting questions. Give me one moment. All right, so we have a question from, well, I won't take the name this since they're DMing me. Can knowing workplace traits of candidates right at start of hiring help make, basically help reduce drop rates? So,
sorry, I couldn't hear the first part of it.
Can knowing workplace traits of candidates right at the start of hiring help reduce the drop rates?
Workplace traits.
Yes. So I'm guessing this is more to do with possibly the background check, understanding how they are at the workplace, maybe at their previous employer, just understanding how good they are in terms of adaptability to a new culture. If you try to get to understand that before they're joining, does that help reduce the drop rates?
So I think there are 2 points here. One is, how do you do it? If a person is looking out for a job, you can't go out to the current organization and ask for that feedback. That's not done. Second thing is, again, there is a Indian behavior where we don't give honest feedback, or we all want to be very nice and very, so we write good things about any person, whoever wants a feedback or organization wants a feedback. Unlike the US, where recommendation is taken very seriously and it's very honest and authentic. But so I don't think it will sort of, at least we are not matured as a country in that respect, or maybe culturally it is not something we can sort of handle.
The person just added to their question. They said basically trying to understand, looking at their soft skills, their adaptability, patience, learning agility. Are there ways, first of all, to even test these before they join? And can these help reduce the drop rate?
A very good question. So basically, you can do, a psychometric test can be done to understand the fitment. However, when there is so much of shortage in the market, you're not getting people. So you have 5 candidates, you have to take the best out of the 5, best 2 out of the 5 maybe. And then if you put in more bars to select and decide whom to take, you are actually left with nothing. So those things, all of us have done, and we would love to do it to find out the fitment. But that can be done only when there is at least a semblance of a supply line.
We have Ayush who has raised his hand, so I'm going to ask you to unmute and maybe share your question verbally.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So my question is, how do you, it's along the lines of the previous question asked, but my question is, how do you interview and test for characteristics like persistence, curiosity and entrepreneurial spirit when you're doing this interview process, right? So agreed that the supply line issue and the lack of candidates is a hindrance that prevents you from kind of giving this too much weight. But like you said, eventually over the course of the next couple of maybe a year or so, we should see a more balanced supply chain or a supply line. And yeah, I'm just looking for like some practical ways of testing for these characteristics.
Okay, so two
Apologies for that. You got unmuted.
Yeah, I think.
I'm sorry.
So there are two things. One is there are tests available in the market to test the competencies of candidates of any person per se. I would not say these are the, absolutely 100% accurate things, but they point towards certain traits, and our questions when we interview can be more probing if we find something which is to be probed. One is that. Second, even if we don't use these tools, I think by reading the resume, especially if you talk about persistence, you would know, what is the stickiness of the person. You would also know that suppose it's a person with 3 years of experience, what stickiness do you check in the resume? You don't. Then you ask questions like, what is it that you do in your pastime? You understand whether the person has stuck with, suppose someone plays guitar. He has been playing it since last 10 years, which means that the person has certain tenacity for doing certain things. So you ask allied questions, not necessarily in the work area, to understand whether a person is, consistent in doing certain things. I mean, this is just an example. If you could, we can take any competency and we can sort of think through and say that, okay, this is the question I can ask to understand.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Are there any other questions from the audience members? Right. I have a question that I wanted to ask, which is, how do you counter offers? Because that is a practice that has been happening quite a bit. Sometimes it is that a candidate is in their parent company, they get an offer from another company, they'll go back to their company saying, I have this offer. So that becomes a retention thing. Or it could be that, yeah, I have an offer from you, I have an offer from another person. So how do you counter the effect of counter offers? Because I'm sure there is a limit to which you can stretch in terms of compensation or any other benefits that you can give.
So I think two aspects to it. In principle, we are not in favor of counter offers because it just shows that we were wrong in the first place, which is not a good, sort of indication to give to a candidate that. But however, having said that, I don't think you can stick to that in today's world because there are situations where you already have, you've waited for maybe 2 months for one candidate, he dropped out, then this is the second candidate, and the end of 4 months or 5 months, you realize that this person is also maybe not joining. So desperate situations call for desperate measures. Having said that, there will always be a budget, an upper limit. So you always go back to business and ask that this is the situation, this is how I read it. Do you think that we can go up any further? Or would you the other way? So then it's a consultative way to find a solution to the problem. Because ultimately it's a business problem, right? So as a recruiter, you can't take a decision alone. And so depending on the situation, depending on the criticality of the role, depending on the urgency, you pick a call at that point in time.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you alluded to more mentoring happening now. I'm sure that plays a major role in the counter as well. I'm sure you can counter with mentoring, wherein suppose they join, a company might be paying high, but it might just have really bad culture. So I'm sure mentoring comes into play as well.
See, if you really look at the levels of hiring, you will see this kind of behavior is much less at senior levels or mid-senior levels. Because at that level, the softer aspects become much more important. But at 2 years to 8 years experience, I think people look at the money part first, and then they look at the other issues, because you know the repercussions of the other issues uh, at that experience level, probably you don't have experienced or have realized how it impacts you. And at that see 50% at a low base is doable, but 50% at a senior level is not doable. So the counter offers or the salary increases are happening much at the lower level, right? At the entry level, or 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, up to 8 years, it's happening. So there the attraction is much more, because you are fighting a 50% high or a 100% high. So to counter that with softer aspects is difficult. But when the percentage is, comparing between say 12% and 15%, or 15% and 18%, then you can bring in other elements.
Thank you so much for that. We have Neeraj who has raised his hand. You can unmute yourself, Neeraj.
Hello.
Yeah, Neeraj.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So my question over here is like as I have been like doing recruitment from past like 5 years, and it's been like it's really very challenging for this time, because near about like 10 to 15 offers which we guys rolled out in the past month. So let's say only one get converted in that. So if I'm talking about, yeah, obviously there is a big role of notice period as well, and the majorly like the kind of engagement we guys are having in that period, let's say 2 months of notice period if some candidate is having, or 3 months, or like this. So moreover, I am having really great focus on that, like how we can engage the candidates in that particular notice period. And obviously, because like everyone prefers immediate joiners, but yeah, because with the certain rules and regulations and the company policies, obviously that will be also a great thing if we moreover focusing on the same, let's say about the 2 months or 3 months notice period candidate, while giving them chance like to move ahead, and obviously like just like keep on engage them with the same. And like after waiting for so long, if that candidate not get like converted, so obviously like really a huge loss for the company as well as like for us as well, because while having a limited position in some particular profiles, so that really become a big concern for us. So could you please like help me out with the same, that like how we can engage the talent at that particular time?
So yes, Neeraj, you rightly pointed out that everyone wants a candidate who is immediate joinee, because then the chances of dropout is much less. But an immediate joinee would also mean that the person would have resigned maybe 2 months back, and then he would have got a series of offers and you're the last one to offer. So, and that's why he's picking up your offer. So your salary is also at a higher level. Having said that, if that is the best solution possible, that you get a candidate who is an immediate joinee and he doesn't have too much time to play with other offers. But talking about candidates who are serving their full notice period and you're trying to engage with them, I think very important to understand what is important to that person. As an individual, what is it that is driving him? Is it flexibility? Is it money? Is it a good manager? Is it a good organization culture? Is it a career growth? Is it something that he wants to do with his with his life, which he has planned, and the organization can somehow help him achieve that goal? So I think finding that is very, very critical. And once you find that sweet spot, I think that's where you have to play. And I'm not saying that, you have to promise something which is not doable. But if you find that, and if you can find a match in the organization, then I think that alignment becomes much more easy.
So thank you so much for that, Neeraj. I hope that answers your question. Someone has just shared a question in the chat. What should we do if these scenarios have an impact on our own mental health? I'm sure that's a very important question. This is a stressful time in general, and then to add to that, the stress of all these offer drops and everything. Tell us a little bit about how you take care of your mental health. How do you suggest people under you take care of your mental health?
Yes, it's a reality, because it's like a sales job. Recruitment is, it's a sales job, if you really categorize it. And any sales job has this tension that, whether you'll make your numbers, you will not make your numbers. But at this point in time, all of us are in the same boat, brother. So, it's not that one person is doing very well and in comparison, your numbers are low. So what is happening is happening across the industry. So if you were doing 8 hires a month pre-COVID, today you're doing maybe 3-4, but your colleague is also doing 3-4. So I think there is some consolation there, that relative performance may not have dipped, though the overall performance would have dipped. But there are certain external factors which we sort of, I think the organizations also understand. And while I absolutely understand and empathize with the frustration and the disappointment when this happens, but I think the key to a healthy mental framework is to not take it personally and to keep it at a professional level, because it has got nothing to do with you per se. It has got something to do with the times and the situation, all of it. And even if it has got something to do with you, something which you could have done better, I think then it's a learning experience. We should take it as a learning experience and move on from there, and not dwell on it that, why did I do it, or I should have done it. Instead of getting into that negative frame of mind, I think we should take it as a learning and move ahead.
Thank you so much for that. I hope that answered your question. I want to, we're nearing the end of this session. I think I have one question with 2 parts to it, just 2 different audience for the same question, basically. Any, parting piece of advice for the HR and TA folks among us right now in our audience who are watching this right now, or hopefully later they're watching the recording? And secondly, any advice for people who are candidates, who are looking to join different companies, who are looking to switch, any piece of advice for them? Yeah.
I think I'll take the candidates first. So for the candidates, my only submission is don't only look at the salary, because eventually it will even out. And if you are a good performer, you will be paid as per the market. There will be ups and downs, but you will be paid as per the market. If not in this current organization, some other organization will pay you. So let that not be the only deciding factor in your choice for an organization. Look for career growth, look for opportunities of growth. When I say growth, I don't mean promotions and job role change. Learning. What I'm talking about is, take up opportunities where the learning opportunities are the maximum. I think because that will stay with you for a much longer time than a sudden increase in the salary. So that's for the candidates. For the recruiters, I think you are very much in demand. Today, if I follow the different groups, I see that the demand for the talent acquisition specialists are constant because the demand for candidates are more. So it's a good time for you as well. While the numbers are not looking up, but the job scenario is actually quite hot and quite interesting. So, but for you as well, as I said, look at the opportunities of learning and growth and don't look at salaries only. So, and have faith, the situation will pass over. Take as much learning as you can from the current scenario, because if you learn to engage with candidates, it will also come to you very helpful, even when the demand is much less or the supply is higher.
Sorry, in the last moment, we just received one last question that I'm going to take. This is a bit of, I would say, a controversial question. Can we create some policies for new joinees so that offer drops can be lowered?
A policy is applicable to employees only. As long as the person, you can hold a person accountable to a policy when he is your employee. If the person is not your employee, you cannot hold a person accountable.
Thank you. That was a very succinct and precise response, Dheeraj. I hope that answered your question. So, with this, I would like to bring today's session to an end. Sreerupa, it has been an absolute pleasure and privilege to have you here. Today we talked about how the whole pre-joining engagement strategy has evolved to the part where you have to be creative, as a talent acquisition professional, as an HR professional, you have to create a whole engagement plan. You have to constantly be in touch with the candidates. You have to do various creative things like coffee with a leader or many other things. We also talked about how there are psychometric tests which can be used to assess employees before they join. However, when you're in a state where you have a huge demand to fill, you will just look at, okay, let me just look at who is the best employee right now, and we'll set aside the assessments for later. We talked about how so many how you as recruiters, as HR professionals, must take care of yourself as well. Very important, because you are the heart and soul of a company as well. And finally, we did talk about how it's really impossible to tackle the whole offer drop issue with any policies, since they cannot apply to any employee before any candidate before applying before joining the company. So I hope that it was as fruitful an experience as it was for me here. It was for us at Masai. Sreerupa, thank you so much for giving us your time in the middle of your, I'm sure, very busy schedule. And thank you again for having us. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. And we hope to see you again whenever the next session happens. Please stay tuned for announcements on our email, on our various social media, LinkedIn and Instagram. And also we will be emailing you in case you have registered for this session. So thank you again, and have a great day ahead, and have a great coming weekend.
Pleasure is entirely mine. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you
so much.
Bye-bye.